made up to catch the traffic, catch the search traffic. Okay. So web content creators are autonomous and they're uncontrolled, and so no one stops me from making a page and writing whatever I want on the page. Okay. And it's adversarial. I may intentionally create pages with keywords just to drive traffic to my page. And of course, as we say this, this has been, some of these slides have hung around, and they've, variations of them you're still seeing. And as I show this slide, at some point of time it could happen. Now it's, of course, has happened. In fact, the entire content portals business is this. They just make up, about.com, for example, makes up random answers to any questions people are likely to have, and then put up a page. Okay? If you are trying to find, for example, cure for common cold, because you don't trust your doctor who says there is no cure for common cold, Google does have cures for common cold. Right? Every page explains the whole concept of rhinovirus, etc., etc. And the bottom of the page is the helpful message saying for only $29.99. You will get this tried and tested method for completely curing common cold, which these obviously, the doctors haven't figured out yet. And this page, because just between you and me, we are going to give it to you. Okay? And how did they do this? They just know that there'll be enough suckers out there who would be searching for cure for common cold. And then, you just have to catch them. Okay? So we need some metrics about the trustworthiness and importance of the page. Okay? And hopefully, either you can have some sort of a trustworthiness agency, and which gives a badge, like the ISO badge, saying, you have satisfied the standard of being trustworthy. And then everybody stands in a line. Whenever they create a page, they stand in this line to get this badge, which is not going to happen, right? Or you have some dynamic way of capturing the importance. Now, when you do it dynamically, obviously it's not going to be foolproof. Once I figure out how you're going to capture trust, I'll find a way of defeating it. I mean, even before I go to PageRank, you know about page forms, which are basically, just increase your importance measures based on link analysis. Because there's money in it, we do. Okay? So the point is, at least the first order level, this sort of explains why you need to have some way of deciding importance over and above relevance, over and above similarity of the keywords. Okay? One possible place you can start with is this hyperlink structure. You can actually, there are many other ways of defining importance, and in fact, most working search engines will use multiple possible ways of computing the page importance and use them all together in some secret formula. Okay, but the thing that has caught people's imagination is the link analysis. Okay, and so we'll basically talk about what it means to use link analysis, links between pages, to decide on what is an important page. Okay, so the hyperlink structure of the page sort of defines an implicit social network, and you know this, right? That essentially in junior high, who is the most popular kid? The kid who thinks he or she is the most popular kid, or the kid that other people think are the most popular kids. Okay, and furthermore, who is saying you are the popular kid also matters. Other popular kids or other semi-popular kids saying you are popular makes your popularity bigger than, in fact, the death knell would be your mother coming to the school and saying, he's a popular kid. That would for sure ensure that, you would not be popular. But the point being that the popularity, the importance of the page in some sense depends on the importance of the pages pointing to the page. So there is some notion of recursiveness in this. So even before we look at specific methods, you already see that its importance is some sort of a fixed point computation. Okay, so can we exploit this? Can we generate some sort of a fixed point computation which gives you some importance? Okay, so this I'll skip, this also I'll skip. Now, one thing is actually, in fact, I'll come back to this probably next time. But here's one interesting thing. This page actually, this slide is actually trying to talk to you about what would be the right way to define importance measures. before you even go about defining one. Okay, we did this for relevance too. We talked about what should relevance be capturing, and then we capture what we can. Okay, so I wrote some things down. For example, page importance is hard to define unilaterally. It does depend. It's sort of context specific. What's important for me may not be important for you. Okay, so for example, it does depend on the user. The importance of the page also depends on the query, right? In the sense, the topic of the query. So for example, if you are asking questions about cse494 homework, my page is a pretty good page. If on the other hand, you are asking about what's going to happen in stock market tomorrow, even if I have a bunch of junk written on my page, it would not be a good page for you. So I'm not an expert on that topic. So the expertise is topic specific. Importance should also be topic specific in the most general scenario. Okay? So it should depend on the query or the topic of the query. It should depend on the user. It certainly should depend. It could depend on the link structure of the web, because to some extent, the fact that somebody took time to point links to your page somehow means that they are thinking something about you. They at least know you exist. Okay. So here's an interesting point, which is now importance of a page depends on who points to it. It also sort of depends on who it points to. Right? Essentially, this is the difference between an original paper and a survey paper. A textbook and, Einstein's original paper on special theory of relativity versus a textbook with a chapter on special theory of relativity. One is a survey. It tells you where to look at, all the relevant material. And its importance derives from actually pointing to other original important papers in that area. And Einstein's paper is important because all the textbooks point to it. Right? So there are notions of importance, and in fact, this is sort of like, we'll talk about this notion of authorities and hubs, and similarly, agents in Hollywood and the stars in Hollywood. Okay, the agents are important because they can get you in touch with the stars. And the stars are important because they ultimately will get the money for the movie. Okay, so that's and then it also sort of depends on how likely are people going to spend time on this page. Okay, my class, I think I wrote this, that why is Casa Grande an ideal place for advertisements? Those of you who have traveled from here to Tucson, which most of the first semester kids haven't done yet. Casa Grande falls in between. It's not like the greatest place on earth, but it's a great place to put advertisements because real estate is cheap, and everybody who goes from here to there has to go through Casa Grande. So it's a good place to put your advertisement. Okay, so that's also sort of relevant. And then these two are non-obvious desiderata. Because these are all sort of what should be done. What should it capture? Okay? Whether you capture any of these or not, I tell you for sure that if you don't capture these two, you're dead. The first one is, it should be stable with respect to small random changes on the web. Okay? Like, every magazine comes up with the top 10 cities to live. Okay? A top 15 schools to go and get your graduate education. Everybody knows that all these rankings are kind of bogus. Somebody made up this ranking. But you're dying to figure out how to prove this. US News and World Report keeps tracking rankings of universities. ASU is unhappy that they are not putting us in the top 3. And we would like to prove that ASU News and World Report is messed up. That it's like a totally bogus ranking. And similarly, like the People magazine's sexiest men doesn't seem to include me, for example. And I've been trying to prove that it's a bad ranking, and I haven't figured out how to, prove it. Okay? Yeah, I've done that too. But anyway, so the big issue is this. One way I can for sure say that it's a useless ranking is, the US News and World Report's ranking of the universities, and you click on it, it gets it. And you refresh, it changes. You refresh, it changes. Then you know for sure that you guys are clueless. Okay? It's important to stick to it's like the Iraq war sort of a thing. I mean, it's important to stick to your position, even if you sort of think maybe you should change it. Because if you keep changing it, you become the bad guy, the flip-flopper. Okay? And if you flip-flop, then everybody knows that you have no clue about how to judge the importance of the page. Before, I only had the suspicion, but now I know for sure. So if you came up with some importance measure based on all these things, maybe yours is based on all 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Your friends is only based on one of them, right? But yours keeps changing every 3 milliseconds, right? You can be sure that nobody is going to believe this importance measure. So stability is important. It's less important whether or not you got the importance right. I mean, you really believe that People magazine has some sort of a God-given wisdom to decide who is the sexiest X in the world? No. Some bozos sit there and say, okay, it's time for making the special issue, let's make one up. And they'll make one. Okay, if they kept doing it every hour on the hour, then you know that basically it's a made-up thing. The second is it should be too easy to subvert the ranking. The first, you should be stable, and second, if US News and World Report, so to tell you the story, so one time at the beginnings of the web, somebody essentially came up with this great idea that this was like a precursor to whatever is that show, okay, American Idol show, right? Where the CMU grads and MIT grads were basically trying to decide which school is the more popular. So they set up somebody set up like a, this is like, remember, now you all know that this makes no sense, but the first time, of course, when they did this was like they were thinking that people will vote, and based on the voting, we'll decide who is more popular. And so then it became, obviously, a great way to decide how people can subvert the system. So after first 3 days, where there were some people haven't yet woken up to it, they started writing scripts. Okay, so then basically CMU had 6 billion people voting for it, and MIT had 19 billion people voting for it. Never mind, there are not that many people in the world, and then it just keeps going up and up from there. Okay, now what was wrong with that ranking? That ranking was way too easy to subvert. Okay, if people behaved nicely and only people who knew something about computer science were voting, then probably it would have said something. But who's going to behave nicely on the web? Right? So you need to take into account these two for sure. Stability and the ease of dealing with subverting it. There are two approaches we'll talk about next class when we come back. Both are very relevant and they're kind of interesting trade-offs. One is called authorities and hubs. We'll talk about this. The other is called PageRank. We'll also talk about this. Most of you probably have heard of PageRank. Some of you have heard of authorities and hubs. I want to end with this last slide. Before actually telling you what these algorithms are, that the authorities hubs algorithm was published in Symposium on Discrete Algorithms, as well as JACM, which is the flagship journal of computer science. Okay? And Kleinberg, John Kleinberg, who actually came up with the idea, got tenure at Cornell University. Okay? And became pretty famous. So he was famous there. And he also became rich because he got one of these MacArthur Genius Awards, 250,000. He got. And he also got the ACM Infosys Award, which is 150,000. And he also got several Google grants. Okay? The other competitor, PageRank, algorithm was rejected from the Conference on Information Retrieval in 1998. It wasn't good enough to even make it to the conference. And Page and Brin never even got a PhD. They dropped out of grad school. Okay? No cash awards whatsoever. And had to be content with starting a company, a small company. So I hope at the end of this lecture you understand from this that it's very important to publish. Okay, your ideas.
No, it's not.
Okay? And we'll come back and talk about authorities and hubs and PageRank.